Hello and welcome to News Desk. I'm Jared Reid.
And I'm Michelle Stockman.
We have been hearing from Pakistan's finance minister in the last day. He's announced a big jump in how much money is being spent on defence and the military. It's just a month since Pakistan and its arch rival India fought a 4-day conflict. Their short and intense clash was their worst in more than 2 decades.
That's right. And that standoff has seen a jump in support for Pakistan's all-powerful military. But the hike in defence spending is controversial as it's being offset by cuts elsewhere, not to mention some tremendous economic challenges, including an IMF bailout.
That's right. So this week we're asking, is Pakistan spending too much on its military, and maybe where its priorities be instead?
Right. And we've already had people responding to that question. Here are some of the comments that we've been receiving. First of all, from Shrikant Shrasti, 4546. Victory in wars make you do stuff like this. I assume that person means boosting military spending. And then we had a really thoughtful comment from @KNC2111, who basically kind of, I think, summarizes the show. So I'm going to summarize a little bit of what they're saying. Basically, a new World Bank report out saying that people living in extreme poverty has risen significantly in Pakistan. There is the most popular political leader, Imran Khan, who has been jailed. This person says on trumped-up charges. He's denying all the charges against him. And then saying that this country gets a $40 billion loan sanctioned by the World Bank and the IMF to increase its defense expenditure by 20%. So much for people's welfare and democratic values. So that's really what we're going to get into today. Should the military be spending this money when there's a lot of other things people want to spend money on in Pakistan?
Exactly, and we've got a lot of really great context to get through today. We have some really wonderful guests too. Dr. Aisha Siddiqa is Senior Fellow at the Department of War Studies at King's College London and the author of 2 books on Pakistan's military, including the acclaimed book Military Inc. Inside Pakistan's Military Economy. And you can see her there, and we'll get to Dr. Siddiqa in just a moment with our first question. Welcome to you. And of course, many of you will also recognise Beenish Javed, an experienced journalist who's reported over many years on Pakistan. She's going to talk about the mood in the country and help us understand really the popularity of the military and how that's changed in recent years. So thank you very much to you, Beenish, as well. And Nihal Jori is here monitoring the chat today. Welcome to you, Nihal. You've got a poll for us.
Yes, the poll is exactly what Michelle sort of summarised. So we're asking people, where should Pakistan's government focus right now? And you have 4 options. Should it be on national security, health and education, climate change, or economy and tax reform? The poll is available to the right of the chat, and you can all vote. Please vote, and please also put in your questions, comments, so that I can bring it up during this conversation.
Thank you so much, Nihal. Before we get underway, I was wondering if we might be able to play, I think we've got it, this soundbite of Pakistan's finance minister announcing an increase to military spending in the last day.
The country's defence is of prime importance to the government. For this national obligation, $9 billion are being allocated.
So that was the finance minister of Pakistan there. And first up, I wanted to welcome Dr. Aisha Siddiqa from King's College London. Thank you so much for your time. Before we get underway and talk a little bit about the context of Pakistan's economic situation currently, I just would like to know what your first thoughts were when you heard about this jump in defence spending. Was it a surprise for you, or were you expecting it?
First of all, thanks for inviting me. No, I wasn't surprised. Honestly, that was expected, especially after this conflict. They've been getting increases in the budget, but this is the first time that budget has been increased in real terms. Mainly because in the past couple of years, because of devaluation of currency, high inflation, budget had been increased, but it hadn't increased in real terms. This is the first time in 2 to 3 years that the budget has been increased in real terms.
Okay,
Now this is something which they thought was necessary.
Okay, thanks so much for that. And you mentioned this recent conflict, this 4-day conflict with India, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a little while. But let's go to Michelle first, because talk to us a little bit, Michelle, about some of the context in which this increase in military spending is happening. What is the economic situation in Pakistan right now?
Right. Well, I'm going to take my cue from DeVos, who is one of our loyal watchers, who said, I'm very ignorant on anything Pakistani, to be honest. Okay, look, we're here for you. We want to kind of blow out the big picture and just get to the basics of the Pakistani economy. We've also got people who are experts, so please, fact check me in the comments if I don't get something exactly right. But basically, what we want to do is lay out the big picture. So Pakistan is a country of about 250 million people. And according to the latest report from the World Bank, we're nearing about 45% of those people living in poverty. So when we talk about that in real numbers, like the average salary, monthly salary in Pakistan is about $300 a month. But that's, again, average. Most people are making that or much lower. We're talking about maybe $3 a day, kind of meaning about like $75 to $90 a month. So you've got a big disparity in terms of the amount of money that people are earning, most very poor. And then you've also got very rich people who are, owning businesses and industries. But then we look at the tax base, okay? So Pakistan is a country where a lot of people work in the informal sector, meaning it's kind of a cash economy. There's not a lot of tax compliance. And then you've also got people, it's been reported, who are in the upper classes who are able to avoid taxes. So you've got this middle class that is heavily taxed, a narrow tax base. So there's not a lot of services that are paid for by the government. So you've got people needing money for education, for roads. Those things are just not invested in because there's not the tax base to pay for it. Okay. And then when we look at the recent past, leading up to the last election in 2024, the country was in economic crisis. So we're talking about, I've got a graph here on my computer. We're talking about the inflation rate. In May 2023, the inflation rate was 38%. So, Beanish, we talked a lot leading up to the election. So can you explain for a lot of people, like, what that meant to have a 38% inflation rate?
So this was, in decades, one of worst economic crises that Pakistan faced. I remember just like maybe 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, there was a time when you were hearing this news that people were actually getting killed when they were waiting in line to get, like a bag of flour or a sack of flour. So that is kind of like...
Why were they getting killed?
Because of crashes, because there were so many people that they got killed. There were incidents where people got killed
because
in
these
crashes.
were really low cost bags of flour?
Because we are talking about millions and millions of people who had either lost their jobs because they were working in factories shut down. People from lower middle class became poor. They were, when they heard that, in this locality, somebody's distributing free flour or free food, they would just go gather, and then there were incidents like that. We heard about reports where middle class people or low middle class people, because of high prices of power, high prices of fuel, they were forced to pull out their children out of school.
That's a no-go in Pakistan.
That's a no-go.
Knowing Pakistani families, you sacrifice everything for education. That is extreme to pull your kids out of school.
This is the kind of poverty, this is the kind of consequences or effects of the economic crisis that we saw in the country.
Right. But we're talking about middle-class families here. Middle-class families who used to be able to afford life, pay for their kids to go to education, pay for fuel for their cars. They had to dramatically change their lifestyle because prices were
they had to dramatically change their lives. Inflation was so high, as you've just mentioned. I remember every time I would go to Pakistan, even in last couple of years, every time I go, I feel it. You can feel it. It's not that, you're going from Europe, you're going to Pakistan, that things would be cheap. You can actually feel that you have just bought 3 or 4 things at a grocery store and your bill is like maybe 5,000 Pakistani rupees, and you're amazed and shocked, how are people surviving in that country? But it's also a story of resilience and Pakistanis have gone through this economic crisis, and things have gotten a bit better because of course, in IMF installments.
Right. So we've had an IMF bailout. So that started in September 2024 after the election. First tranche of $1 billion released, and then just in May 2025, another tranche of $1 billion released. And that has brought inflation down and kind of settled things a little bit. And there have been, things that the IMF wants, and I've got another thing here that talks about kind of the reforms that are being asked. So reform of the tax system. So looking at reducing corruption, reducing the deficit, and there's just a list of things that the IMF wants to do with reform. But still, the structure of the Pakistani economy is difficult. Like, it is an economy that is import-based. It has a high trade deficit, has to import its energy. Yeah. I mean, living there, there were a lot of brownouts or blackouts daily when the electricity isn't just there. It's not just in homes, it's also in factories. So it's an economy that is troubled. And now we're facing a new budget is released where the Pakistani military wants to increase its spending.
Yeah, and I wonder if I could bring you in here, Dr. Aisha Siddiqui. When you and I were chatting on the phone a little bit earlier, you were talking to me about how there is not only, I guess, a lack of foreign investment in Pakistan, but given what we've just been hearing now from Michelle and Binish, also a lack of domestic investment. That's really a big problem for the economy.
Yeah. Definitely, these problems remain. Just want to make a couple of points.
Please.
When Binish said about resilience, I think just because I'm alive and I haven't died does not necessarily mean resilience. You live because you haven't died. That's the situation. Resilience means when people push back, have force a government to rethink their priorities. That hasn't happened. Yes, there is a macroeconomic improvement which has been brought in the last year and a half, a couple of years. But the problem is that there is still a lot of fudging of figures. For example, the finance minister has said that economy has risen by 2.7%. Economic growth is 2.7%. He is being challenged by specialists in Pakistan who write on the economy, and they say it's less than 2%, the growth rate. It's not 2.7%. So the finance minister is impressing. And the other thing is that, the lack of trust. Who runs the economy? I mean, where do you compete? When you have a system where the military is so powerful, when they're trying to get into everything from agriculture to cryptocurrency to, you name it, into IT, and they're setting the tone for where the investment has to go. People are wary. I mean, of course, they're beneficiaries. There are groups, there are elite groups who would partner with the military, who'd come and invest. But it's not, it's very oligarchic. So people would be wary of investment. As far as foreign investment is concerned, there is a problem. Saudi Arabia, it was expected that Saudi Arabia is going to invest, UAE is going to invest. We have been having this conversation forever for the last couple of years. But there's actually not been any substantial investment where industries would be set up, where you'd see moving forward. And another thing which has come out, which has been released via the Economic Survey of Pakistan for the latest, it's a document which is issued right before at the time of every budget, every year, is that unemployment has increased in Pakistan. And that's very worrying.
Dr. Siddiqa, I wanted to bring up something you were just talking about as we move along a little bit, and talking a little bit about how intertwined, and I know you've written a book about this, about the military economy, but how intertwined the military is with the economy. It's a major stakeholder in the economy, isn't it? And private business. Could you just paint a picture for our viewers, everyone watching today, what it's really like and the influence of the military on business and the economy in Pakistan?
Sure. See, as you said, military is a major stakeholder. So what happens is that in all three important sectors of the economy, which is agriculture, manufacturing, service industry, the military is present. So from producing, manufacturing fertilizer to cereals, to education, to oil and gas, to crypto, to I mean, you name it, they're there. So it's banks, yeah, of course, banks. Once upon a time, they were also running an airline, but they mishandled and they had to sell it. The problem is that, and on top of that, you have the SIFC, which is the Special Investment Facilitation Council, which has placed the military commanders, senior military commanders, not just in the prime decision-making role in distribution of resources, but at operational level as well. So there is a problem here, and this is not a level playing field. So, for example, let me give you a quick example.
Yeah.
So, military industries get gas subsidy from the government, which means that the rate at which they get their gas is much cheaper than what the private sector player would get. So there is no real competition here, and which creates a problem. Now they've started getting into agriculture. There is a plan which the army chief has, and he wants to set up 6 canals, and this 6 canals to irrigate an area which is desert, which is sand. Now there are very few countries who have managed to irrigate such sandy area, deserts. I mean, India has not really been successful. They probably look at Israel and how Israel has succeeded, but the amount of money that Israel has to throw in, or the assistance that Israel got from the United States, where is that money for Pakistan to invest in that kind of irrigation schemes?
Yeah.
So that's going to, and that is going to create political problems as well. So instead of strengthening, you're going to have weakening. So that's one issue. And the other is that something that we don't look at all is that, sure, I mean, to fight an external threat, we need a strong military. And this is the perception amongst people as well, that military has to be built, has to be strengthened. But the point is, there is no accountability, and therefore, non-combatant expenditures, which are also very high, they could easily be diverted towards strengthening, the combat side of it. That hasn't happened either.
What I sort of wanted to just clarify with you, this intertwining of the military into business and the economy, this is separate, isn't it, to the budget from the government? So the money that the military gets from the budget, this is separate to its other to its other incomes.
Yes, certainly. So from perks, pensions, everything, government of Pakistan pays for it. So it's not that it's ever run short of money, or the government has ever said, we are not going to give you money. So defense budget or military expenditure is one, but their dive into the larger economy is totally separate. And both, by the way, sectors are, there is lack of accountability completely. Pakistan's defense budget is primarily a single line budget. At best, over years, what has improved is some details of what percentage goes to the Navy, to the Air Force, to inter-service institutions, to the Army, nothing more than that. It's not even debated in the parliament.
So given all of that...
The military
Please.
business, let me quickly finish.
Sure.
Military business, completely lack of transparency and accountability, because they say, this is private sector, we don't owe it to the government to show our, records there. So no transparency.
Binish, so Dr. Siddique is talking about a lack of accountability. I guess how does that manifest itself in the lives of everyday people?
So I'll just talk from a very basic citizen, for example, how a citizen in Pakistan would see the military. Military definitely, for years and years, has been a very respectful, like in eyes of Pakistani public, an institute where, it's high prestige. If you are from the military family or if you are from the military, you definitely have a status and a privilege in that society. Many services, many options, or many of the problems actually you can go by because of the status and the power that comes with being in the military. But I think it did, when we talk about like last few years, Imran Khan and his political party, I would say maybe for the first time in Pakistan's history, this kind of like damage and dent to this, what I'm talking about, the privilege and the high reputation that Pakistani military enjoyed, that was hit for the first time. And therefore, we saw that even people, like normal people, started criticizing or started looking at the military with a different eye and with a different view. And I'll give you an example. I think it was like maybe 2 years ago, I was in Pakistan, or when I was covering elections just last year, and people were telling me, like normal, common people were saying that, the military is, whatever Dr. Siddiqa is mentioning, that, military is running marriage halls, military is running our country, they are running our country, and we have to, stand up for democracy, because, of course, they were at that time followers and supporters of Imran Khan's party, and Imran Khan really mobilized people using this rhetoric. But it's interesting how, like now what is happening now, of course, we see that the military has once again cemented its reputation. The country is now, again united behind the military. It's maybe Dr. Aisha Siddiqa can answer what does now it means for the future of how because at the same time, it's really hard to criticize the military, kind of the threat that Pakistani military or the Pakistani government says it now poses from India. So it becomes really difficult now to criticize the military. I have seen many journalists, even who were critical of the civilian government, who were critical of the military establishment, who were continuously raising their voices. For example, Imran Khan, who's in jail. All of that has, for now, changed. All of them are now again behind the military, and they say no compromise on national security. This is our military, and we have to. So I'm a bit like, I don't know how or what does it mean now when it comes to future of democracy or the role the military will continue to play in the country.
These are great questions. I just had a couple comments here in the chat. I'd love to get your reaction and Dr. Siddiqa's reaction too. We got one from Davos, who basically is saying that it looks like building up the military is more about keeping the establishment in power than protecting the people, saying we've seen these same austerity policies from other countries corrupt people, get into power, and defund social programs and education and build up the military. And then Manatuli asking, we're seeing that, as you said, the Pakistani military is able to spend and has special privileges, create cantonments where they live. But we're talking about real wealth here that many in the higher echelons of the Pakistani military are able to accrue when they are in the military. I'm wondering if you can react to that, Dr. Siddiqa. Like, how much wealth are we talking about here?
Okay, just to give you an example, a 3-star general is worth very easily around $20 to $25 million. The 4-star is more, 30 to 35.
Wow.
Now, compare that with an average middle-class person or a poor person in Pakistan. So there is a lot of accumulation of wealth. And this value that I'm giving you doesn't include the illegal economy. This is their legal wealth as a result of the number of, real estate that they acquire through their career. Certain other opportunities do they get. So that's, a huge value. And that also creates problem for the military itself, because the whole tension within the institution happens because everybody is looking at who's going to go to the top. How do you want to get close to the man on the top? Because it's no longer just about fighting. It's about, for the country, it's about resources you can accumulate.
I just want to...
This is where the problem is.
How does the military justify this, though, to the average person? You're talking about this extreme wealth in a section of society when a large part of the other part of the society is really struggling to get by. How does the military justify this, and why isn't there a greater level of public disaffection about that?
There was disaffection. People had started talking about it until this war happened. And I'm not saying that this will be a permanent love with the military, because poverty brings its own problems. So people will get dissatisfied and start looking at, what options do they have in comparison to the military. How do they justify it? India and Kashmir. We have to strengthen ourselves. We need it for the welfare of military men. This is important. One of the justifications that I heard from one of the generals was, if the economy ever goes bust, we should have this alternative economy to survive. But I'm not even too certain about efficiency of these business units. Because if we did have that assessment ever, we'd probably find out that this would not be able to sustain their spending if the military, if the economy ever goes bust. And I think the problem is that because of the power of the military, the third reason why there's never been an accountability, they're so powerful and they've strengthened their power so much, and they've found partners within the civilian political leadership. Every single party. I mean, today the fact of the matter is that there is no single political party, left of center, right of center, who has the power to question the military and its responses.
I mean, you were talking obviously about Kashmir, but hasn't India always been a threat, and the reason why Pakistan has sort of constantly armed itself? So why all this now in particular when it's been going on for such a long time?
Well, this increase, I mean, this building up of this alternative economy for the military, that's been happening for the last 30, 40 years. But every conflict then helps in so there are two levels of conflict. This is a result of two conflicts in the country. One is external conflict, which kind of justifies it. But domestically, you have a political conflict. Every political party who wants to remain in power, who wants to win political favors of military generals, use these businesses, these business opportunities as sweeteners to kind of sustain their time in power and therefore nobody looks at it. I mean, the last time I remember one ever heard kind of exciting debate on the defense spending was during 1980s, 84, 82, 86. That was Prime Minister Muhammad Ali Khan Junaid's term in the parliament. And that was a time when people were questioning, when parliamentarians were asking questions. In fact, then General Ziaul Haq, who was the army chief then and the chief marshal or administrator. I mean, he gave a famous statement. He said, wars cannot be won, without tanks, and we need tanks for tanks and fighter aircraft for fighter aircrafts and for ships. So that's what happened then. But that was the only time we had that kind of a debate. Then later on, just let me quickly finish.
Sure.
2008 to 2013, that was a period when the Standing Committee of the Senate on National Security tried to ask questions. And the two people who were who could do that, who were asking questions, they were told, the military told the political parties, one is Faridullah Babar, attached with the Pakistan People's Party, and then there was Afrasiab Khattak of the Awami National Party. Both their parties were told to kind of shunt them off of the Senate. They lost their seats.
Binish, you have something to say.
Dr. Aisha Siddiqa, I have a question about then what happens now after the recent conflict. So does it give more reasons for the military, of course, to increase its budget? Because what I'm trying to understand is this did happen. It was not like India did attack. According to Pakistan retaliated and then won this good image in the country that, a smaller military was able to retaliate against a bigger military. And then we saw, even if it's temporary, we saw that the public did back the military. So now it does, I don't think even it needs to justify right now. So no questions will be asked.
See, my problem is not that the budget has gone up. My problem is that there is no accountability. So you don't even know how the money is being spent. I mean, let's not forget that this didn't happen in a day. So 2019, right? 2019 was when the last conflict between India and Pakistan happened, right? And now, that is a time when militaries tend to kind of analyze, look at what equipment do they have to buy. How do you divert money which can be used from within the defense budget to more useful things? I mean, for example, what came out very clearly in this war was that Pakistan needs to improve its air defense system. It didn't work. India firstly attacked 9 targets, then 11 air bases. So air defense didn't work. Now, where is the money going to come from? And there's also talk of Pakistan buying the J-35s. China has offered it at very cheap prices. But remember, after 1979, China has not given anything to Pakistan for free. It has smaller costs, but you have to pay for it. Now, all this money, after 2019, what did we do? I mean, we ought to have looked at what kind of equipment we need. What we did instead, we went and bought Chinese tanks. Now, in reality, we know that this is not an equipment that we should be spending on.
So are you essentially arguing, Doctor, that this extra expenditure isn't going to give people a better sense of security at a time when that's what they want?
See, it's all, this is a picture that's going to be drawn, right? I mean, there is a lot of propaganda on Pakistani side, a lot of propaganda on India's side. Both sides are claiming that they had a victory. Now, that would give a cushion of comfort to the public. And the other thing which has happened is that no matter what Pakistan tells you that, our, our media has been more responsible, our media is more free. None of that. Media is not free. Especially on defense and security issues, media is not free. They say what is fed to them.
Okay.
Period.
Michelle.
The point is very quickly.
Yes, please.
What happens then is that there is an image which is created. People will feel secure until the next battle is fought. And the crisis is that people are not going to be explained that a next conflict is going to be even more horrible.
We'll get a little bit more of the feeling on the ground in just a moment. We've sort of been talking about that a lot already, but we'll come to this particularly in just a moment. Michelle.
Yeah, just some reaction in the chat to what you've been saying, Binish and Dr. Siddiqa. A lot about messaging. So you were just talking there, Dr. Siddiqa, about the propaganda that exists and for the Pakistani military. One comment here from Nilay Chaturvedi, going even further, saying people can't criticize the military because they know that their loved ones will be harmed if they do. There's that side of the propaganda there. And then there's also a question about messaging, and tell me if this is even coming through, Binish and Dr. Siddiqa, from John Kande. Don't the Pakistani masses get angry when they see the Indian economy doing much better than the Pakistani economy? And see that many Indians have a much better standard of living. Is that getting through it all through this propaganda push around the Pakistani military and Pakistan itself?
I think there is a realization, at least at the government level. There have been statements coming out that, for example, Prime Minister just gave a statement that Pakistan was able to win the conventional war with India. Now we have to win the economic war with India. So there is a realization, and officials are talking about. They are speaking about it. That I also saw many news channels. Many anchors were also saying now, we have to defeat India economically because that's the reality. This kind of narrative we see, and there is definitely a realization that Pakistan is a weaker economy, and in the long run, for it to survive and to be able to have clout in the world and influence in the world, it has to have a stronger economy.
And is this economic realizations, wanting to build up a stronger economy, part of the reason why this 4-day conflict did not escalate into something much, much more severe?
I mean, I think that's another chapter of why the conflict did not escalate. I mean, there are different theories. We know that U.S. stepped in. U.S. president publicly said that he was behind the ceasefire. India has a different point of view. Pakistan completely endorsed that it was the U.S. That mediated this ceasefire. There are other factors, of course. Dr. Aisha Siddiqa, maybe she can comment. There's also the factor of both the countries are nuclear powers. So what could an escalation between these countries would have meant? Right. So I think in the 4-day standoff, maybe it was not, the economy was not directly playing a role in it, but many other factors that maybe also scared the world. As Pakistan says, or as the U.S. says, that they intervened and made the two countries sort of sign a truce.
Dr. Siddiqa, do you have any reflections on that?
Sure. See, firstly, what's important to understand is that, and I find it very funny as well, especially during this conflict. Pakistani media is generally not seen in India, and Indian media is not seen in Pakistan. Newspapers, books, etc. don't come. I mean, books do come, but now there is a ban on that as well. So where do masses get their view on India? And vice versa. The other thing is that when push comes to shove, right? Even if you're poor people, if it comes to your security, your larger neighbor, if the perception is they're trying to harm you, attack you, yes, people will stand up. They will not question that, we're poor, the military's taken a lot of budget. Then the issue becomes very different. It will be, here is the military, it's the only institution which can protect us. Fair enough. Let them do the job.
You were just talking...
But I think, yeah. But the thing is that, so I don't think that people do have a general view that India's economy is better. But the military, this particular army general, for example, and the government, they've been saying for the last 3 years now, this is even before the war, that they're going to improve the economy, that the 3 areas where the army chief has special attention is agriculture, information technology, and I think there's one thing else. So it's that involvement as well. And the problem is that Pakistan has a lot of unskilled labor. Pakistan does not really compete with India in terms of the skilled manpower that India has, which goes around the world in the IT industry, from Germany to United States, from UK. Pakistan has issues. And I think this is a debate which needs to happen in Pakistan about where the balancing will come.
I want to get to that a little bit later and sort of look more towards the future and what we can expect. I just wanted to pick up on something you said just a little bit earlier, and Binish is going to talk about this as well. You're talking about where masses get their views, and we have something to show, don't we, Binish? We have some video. Just explain to us, Dustin, that's our producer, if he wouldn't mind bringing some of these videos released by the Pakistani military up, and then Binish can maybe talk through a little bit of what we're seeing here. Dustin, if you wouldn't mind bringing that up. So what is this, Binish?
It's a very, very catchy theme. I think we can all agree on this. But just look at the date. It's May 7, 2025. And that's the day India carried out airstrikes in 9 different locations in Pakistan. India, of course, claimed that it was targeting the terror sites in Pakistan. Pakistan said civilians were killed. But just look at this video. I think what the military did was that it started releasing content, such kind of videos, and these videos have very, very emotional words. They are using words of the unity, power of the military. They are saying that we are ready to fight. Jang ke liye taiyar hai, we are ready to fight the war. And they're also igniting emotions of Islam. It's a Muslim country, so they're also and these videos were then also the local channels in Pakistan also started showing these videos, and it was literally creating like a surge of emotions in Pakistani public, and all of them were watching these songs, sharing these videos, watching television, these songs on Pakistani television. These videos have thousands and thousands of comments, millions of views. So emotions were really high. But I also think that the PR at that time of Pakistani military, especially targeting Pakistani audiences, I would say it was excellent. They really kind of like immediately took the space. I remember I was in the office covering the strikes. On 7th May, it was like night in Pakistan, and even here it was already 10 p.m. in Germany. And I was watching one of Geo News. I was watching, and the news anchor was like, it was, I think, the highest pitch he could go to. Like, it was, and I could feel it, oh my God, this is war. The way he was shouting and he was speaking, and it was, the whole country woke up in the middle of the night. And this, I think, was, even if you call it propaganda, even if you call it like information warfare, it was done very effectively. That's what we saw in Pakistan.
My reaction to that is I don't think that's any different than many countries who find themselves suddenly at conflict. There's a lot of rallying around the flag. This is when the leaders in power generally have the most popularity because they're facing an external enemy, and that unites people, right? I mean, this has been going on for decades, though, and I think a lot of people on the outside of this conflict who aren't Pakistani, who aren't Indian, wonder, you guys are right next to each other, could be great trade partners. Why go to this all the time? Why go to rallying around the flag rather than let's sit down and talk, let's have some diplomacy and see if we can resolve things, and maybe we'd both be better off. I wonder if you could react to that, Dr. Siddiqa.
You know, what you're saying is absolutely makes a lot of sense. But that is the problem with India and Pakistan. Both have historically, I mean, since they was created and they went their separate ways in 1947, both countries have got opportunities and moments, what I call moments of reconciliation. You lose it, then the next opportunity comes maybe in a few years or in a few decades. Now, Pakistan's position at the time is we want to talk.
Yeah.
In fact, I met with Pakistan's delegation visiting the UK, and they said that India came with 3 no's: no to Indus Waters Treaty, no to talks on terrorism, no to an international investigation on Pahalgam, and then there was a 4th no on something else. Now, the point is that India is not conversing, of course. India's point of view, which is also equally understandable, is that it has tried to negotiate and talk peace with Pakistan. Lahore Declaration, I think that was the best moment in India-Pakistan history. Indian Prime Minister, who headed the right-wing BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, came to Lahore on a bus, stood on the monument, the Lahore monument, spoke about how India accepted Pakistan as a reality. They wanted to be friends. There was an agreement and a composite dialogue. And then what we get, the army plans the Kargil operation. Peace is over. Then India talks to the most powerful general, General Musharraf. What happens next? There is Mumbai attacks. Narendra Modi himself comes to Lahore, and then what you get is you have after that is Uri. So the thing is that I think India's, if you listen to India's saying that, look, Pakistani military is never comfortable with this idea of trade with Pakistan. In fact, when Imran Khan was the prime minister, at one point there was this agreement that there will be trade with Pakistan, but that trade, I mean, he ordered trade from India, and then as minister of, I mean, he had dual charge, Minister of Commerce and the prime minister. But as prime minister, then he stopped trade. Interestingly, the last person in Pakistani military who spoke about burying the hatchet was the former, this army chief's predecessor, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, who said, we don't have money to run our tanks and trucks, and therefore let's bury the hatchet and let's have peace. Let's negotiate peace. But very soon he got pushed out as well. So there is a problem. I mean, this is an emotional, historical ego. Pakistan talks about equivalence with India. And the problem is India now has this very harsh right-wing government. So my fear is that the violence or the conflict or the animosity is not going to be dialed down, primarily because it's no longer a territorial issue between the two countries. It's an ideological issue, and that's where we are stuck.
Just real quick, I want to put a button on this.
Yeah.
Ayushman said Russia and Ukraine should also look for trade and economy. They also live next to each other. So I think that comment was meant for me to help me understand, as a European. Yeah, there's a lot of emotion around this, Michelle. Maybe give some context to my question. So
Yeah, absolutely. Binish, do you have anything you wanted to weigh in here? I mean, is there anything that makes you hopeful about this?
Dr. Aisha Siddiqa rightly pointed out that India is also justified in its point of view that it does not want to talk to Pakistan because Pakistan has betrayed its trust over and over and over, and therefore India is not going to talk to Pakistan. I don't think that this policy is sustainable or this policy can work. Even if Pakistan is a complicated, difficult neighbor, a neighbor that has broken India's trust, for these two countries, and remember, these two countries are nuclear-armed countries. This is not a joke when we say these two countries are nuclear-armed countries. A continuous stress or a continuous state of conflict and hostilities between two nuclear-armed countries cannot be a good thing. So what to do? I think even if Pakistan is a very problematic country for India, India has to find a way to negotiate and to talk with Pakistan, maybe on its own terms, maybe find a middle way, but it has to talk with Pakistan because we are talking about more than 1.5 billion people in the region. And as you've mentioned, Michelle, there can be so much good that can come out when these two countries have good relations. But forget about good relations, even just for these countries to be able to live peacefully. I personally think I understand India's point of view, but I also think that just completely shunning a neighbor that exists, that's there, just blocking all roads, blocking all diplomacy to that country may be not a very good strategy in the long run.
Binish, can I come in? I think
Sure.
I completely agree with you. And what you're saying is extremely logical, right? Both countries suffer, but I think what has emerged because of a series of events is that within India itself, Pakistan's image has really gone down. I mean, the general public in India doesn't feel friendly about Pakistan. And in fact, people are saying, why not push? Why not attack more ferociously? The other thing is, I mean, the Indian media just went ballistic. I mean, it was crazy as hell. I mean, arguing that, destroy them, that, we have gone and attacked the Karachi port. I mean, there were a lot of lies as well. Now, what this kind of media publicity does, especially during a conflict, is raise level of expectation, number one. And I think what is the new normal, and which is dangerous new normal in India-Pakistan conflict, is that people are now waiting for more. People have become more jingoistic. People expect more violence, and what I'd call in our language tamasha, and therefore what they're saying, and I think one which people in Pakistan don't realize, that the Mumbai attacks played a major role in the way people looked at Pakistan. Now, I agree that, talk has to be held, but now the problem is that Mr. Modi on his side is caught in this spiral where if he wants to present himself as a strong man in India, I mean, there are political gains by jingoism, and there is political gains by jingoism on our side as well. So for the military to remain secure in its position, in a central position of controlling politics and economy, it has to be more jingoistic. And in any case, being a smaller, relatively smaller neighbor. It can't say that, look, we're ready to talk. What they're saying is, we'll talk if India does. India's saying, and the political cost, what this conflict has done, has raised political cost for negotiating peace. And I think
The tragedy.
right now, that's the tragedy. And with the world going absolutely mad, with Mr. Trump thinking about too many things on his bucket list, from Germany to UK. I mean, Europe is busy looking at Ukraine. Half of them are worried about the Middle East. South Asia, the problem is that nobody has enough time for South Asia, or to actually make both neighbors sit down and say, no, you have to sit down and talk. So the headmaster the analogy that I use is that America used to be the headmaster in the room, telling the two rowdy boys to come and sit down, talk, shake hands. That ain't happening anymore, and that's worrying.
We'll have to leave it there, but I would like to thank you so much for speaking with us today and helping us really understand the complexities of the Pakistan military and also India-Pakistan ties. That's Dr. Aisha Siddiqui from King's College in London, and we would love to have you back on News Desk in the future. So we look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what a discussion.
What a discussion. And can I just read a couple comments? I think there's a lot of cynics in the chat, or maybe people looking at this as kind of a realpolitik situation, the outcome of this 4-day conflict. One talking about the Pakistani army, saying they have to keep Kashmir as a burning issue. This is from Interchem, all the while to keep themselves important and as a savior all the time. And then Sharoz Arsad saying, I think we can't have any discussion here except that India needs Pakistan as an enemy for their domestic politics, particularly for the extreme right BJP. But so I think, we're talking about why Pakistan wants to build up its military and why both sides aren't really willing to come and talk some more. It really does help those in power to keep this image of conflict against each other going.
Yeah. We have been talking a bit, the focus of today's show has been about defence spending, and of course it's sort of taken a different direction a little bit as well. But we have a poll question from Nihal, and Nihal is going to tell us the results of our News Desk poll
We have
today.
not closed the poll yet. Just a second.
Okay.
We still need to stop it.
Yeah, so our question, I think, was where should Pakistan... Oh, I've lost the poll question. Hang on, you've just closed it. Okay, there we go.
We just need a second for it to refresh.
Bear with us. We're going to read out the poll question.
There are 489 votes, so thanks everybody for voting and for all your comments today. I think we had a really interesting discussion.
It's been a really lively one today. Do you want me to get it?
Yes,
Nihal,
I think
I've got it in
I
front of me.
I've got it as well. So you go, Michelle.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just, you get it, because
I've
it
got
disappeared now.
One of us is going to get it, and it's going to be me. Where should Pakistan's government focus right now in this context of, I think, a 20% increase in defence spending announced in the budget yesterday? Where should its government focus on? So our options were health and education, economy and tax reform, national security and climate change. Thank you again to the 489 of you who voted. Health and education came out on top, 42% thinking that...
Quite significantly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were commenting about that as well. There was a common sentiment that there's a lot of funding being taken for the IMF, but why is that not being used to improve people's lives? Why is it somehow going to the military, making them...
This is really refreshing to hear, because remember, Pakistan is a country, 250 million people, 25 million children are out of school in Pakistan.
And as you were saying...
Completely out of school.
And as you were saying as well, Binish, a little bit earlier to me, what is it, 80% of Pakistan's...
70% people are younger than 30 years. So it's a very young country.
Yeah.
Who want opportunity, who want to be able to provide for their families, who want a safe job to go to. And that's really difficult.
I'll run through the others. So we had health and education, 42%, economy and tax reform, 31%, national security, so the underpinning of this conversation really, 19%, and climate change, 6%.
That surprises me.
That's surprising. Yeah,
Pakistan's so affected by climate change.
It is. It is. Both India and Pakistan are
Yeah.
among the top 10 countries most affected by climate change. That's why it's also a tragedy when these two countries are not talking and working together to combat climate change.
So much to think about, and we'll bring some of this, I guess, into a future discussion. But we'd like to thank all of you watching right now for the past hour as well for your participation today in News Desk. It's been really, really interesting. So thank you so much.
And make sure you come back next week. We always post the topic of the show about 24 hours ahead of time so that if you want, you can read up on it and come prepared with your questions. But thanks again for a great discussion, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye-bye.